I had been dating my girlfriend for about 8 months, and honestly, everything was going great. We had this comfortable routine that just worked for us. Every Friday evening, we would meet at this little Italian place downtown, the one with the checkered tablecloths and the amazing garlic bread. After dinner, we would head back to my apartment and watch a movie. Sometimes we would fall asleep on the couch, and sometimes we would actually finish the film. It was predictable, sure, but it was our thing. Now, let me tell you about her personality. She was the kind of person who had everything planned out. I mean everything. She kept lists for her lists. Her phone calendar had reminders for reminders. When we talked about taking a vacation together, she created an actual spreadsheet with different destinations, costs, and activities. At first, I thought it was a bit much. But then I realized it was just how she handled life. She felt secure when things were organized and planned. I respected that about her, even though I was more of a go-with-the-flow kind of guy. That Friday started just like any other. I was at work, counting down the hours until I could leave and meet her at the restaurant. Around 6 in the evening, my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. But it was strange. Usually, she would send me detailed messages about what time to meet, what she was wearing, or if there was traffic on her route. This time, the message just said 3 words and had a winking face emoji. I stared at my phone for a solid minute, trying to figure out what it meant. Was she joking? Was this some kind of game? I texted back asking if everything was okay, but she just replied with another emoji, a little devil face this time. I left work feeling curious and maybe a little worried. Something was definitely different. When I got to my apartment building, I noticed her car was already parked outside. That was unusual because she was always exactly on time, never early. I walked up the stairs to my floor, and when I reached my door, I realized it was unlocked. My heart started beating faster. I pushed the door open slowly, half expecting to find something wrong. Instead, I heard music. Not the usual pop songs she liked, but jazz music. The smooth kind that plays in fancy restaurants. The lights in my apartment were dimmed, and there was this soft glow coming from somewhere inside. I stepped in carefully, closing the door behind me. That's when I saw them, rose petals scattered on the floor, creating a path that led from the entrance toward my bedroom. Real rose petals. The kind you see in movies. I stood there in complete shock, my bag still hanging from my shoulder, trying to process what was happening. Then she appeared. She walked out from my bedroom wearing one of my old concert t-shirts, the one from that rock band I loved in college. She never wore casual clothes like that. She was always dressed nicely, even on lazy Sundays. But there she was, barefoot, hair loose, with this smile on her face that I had never seen before. It wasn't her usual polite smile or her nervous laugh. This was different. This was confidence mixed with something wild, something free. She walked toward me slowly, and I just stood there like a statue. My brain was trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. When she got close, she leaned in near my ear. So close I could feel her breath, and whispered 5 words that made my whole world stop for a second. She said, "No rules tonight." Just like that. Simple words, but the way she said them, with that tone, made them sound like a promise of something completely unexpected. Before I could even respond or ask what she meant, she grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, determined. She pulled me toward the bedroom. And then, with this laugh that sounded so free and genuine, she literally jumped onto my bed. Not climbed, not sat down gracefully, but jumped like a kid on a trampoline. She landed on the mattress, laughing, looking up at me with sparkling eyes. I just stood at the doorway, completely frozen, my mouth probably hanging open like a cartoon character. My girlfriend, the woman who organized her sock drawer by color, had just jumped on my bed and declared a night without rules. What on earth was happening? I must have looked ridiculous standing there in the doorway with my jacket still on and my shoes still tied. She was sitting on my bed, cross-legged now, still wearing that huge smile that made her look like a completely different person. She patted the space next to her, gesturing for me to sit down. I walked over slowly, carefully, like I was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. I sat on the edge of the bed, keeping some distance, still trying to figure out if this was some kind of prank or surprise party setup. She looked at me with those bright eyes and started laughing again. Not at me, but just laughing with pure joy. Then she reached over to my nightstand and picked up a small notebook. I recognized it immediately. It was her planner, the one she carried everywhere. That thing was like her Bible. It had her work schedule, her gym times, her meal plans, our date nights, everything important in her life written down in neat handwriting with different colored pens. She held it up in front of me, waved it around dramatically, and then tossed it across the room. I watched in slow motion as it flew through the air and landed somewhere near my closet. My jaw actually dropped this time. That planner was sacred to her. I had seen her panic once, when she thought she lost it. She spent 2 hours retracing her steps before finding it in her car, and now she just threw it across my bedroom like it was nothing. I turned to look at her, and she was grinning even wider. She told me that tonight, none of that mattered. No schedules, no plans, no checking the time, no thinking about tomorrow. Tonight was about right now, this moment, nothing else. I finally found my voice and asked her what was going on. Was everything okay? Did something happen at work? Was she feeling all right? The questions came tumbling out because this behavior was so unlike her. She put her hand on mine and took a deep breath. Her smile softened a bit, and I could see something deeper in her eyes now, something serious mixed with that wild energy. She told me she needed to break free from something. From herself, actually. From the person she had become. Over the years, she explained that she had spent so much of her life being careful, being prepared, being responsible. She said she barely remembered what it felt like to be spontaneous anymore. Every decision she made was calculated. Every risk was avoided. Every surprise was planned in advance, which defeated the whole purpose of surprises. She told me that for the past few years, she felt like she was living in a box of her own making, and she didn't even realize how small that box had become until recently. I listened. Really listened. As she kept talking. She told me that 2 weeks ago, something happened that changed her perspective completely. She had gone to the doctor for a regular checkup. Nothing serious. Just a routine appointment she had scheduled months in advance. But during that visit, after some tests and scans, the doctor found something unexpected. She had a growth in her brain. A tumor. My heart stopped when she said that word. I started to interrupt, to ask if she was okay, but she squeezed my hand and asked me to let her finish. She told me the tumor was not the dangerous kind. Not the type that would spread or threaten her life immediately. It was benign, the doctor said. But it was growing, and it needed to come out. Surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks from that day. 3 weeks. She had been carrying this information alone for 2 whole weeks, processing it, thinking about it, and I had no idea. I felt my chest tighten with worry and also with hurt that she didn't tell me sooner. But she explained she needed time to deal with it herself first, to understand what it meant. Then she said something that hit me hard. She told me that when the doctor gave her the news, her first thought wasn't about the surgery or the risks. Her first thought was about all the things she hadn't done, all the moments she had postponed, all the spontaneous joys she had traded for safety and planning. She realized that she had been so busy preparing for the future that she forgot to actually live in the present, and that terrified her more than any surgery could. Sitting there on my bed, holding her hand, I felt so many emotions rushing through me at once. Fear for what she was facing. Guilt for not noticing something was bothering her. And confusion about what this all meant for us. She could see it all on my face, and she moved closer, sitting right next to me now, our shoulders touching. She told me that tonight wasn't what I probably thought it was when she whispered those words and jumped on the bed. She explained that this wasn't about being romantic in the usual way, or about doing something crazy just for the sake of it. This was about her taking back a part of herself that she had buried a long time ago. She wanted me to see the real her, the person she used to be before anxiety and fear made her build walls of routines and schedules around herself. She wanted one night where she could just be free, where we could just be together without any pressure or expectations. I asked her why she had become so controlled in the first place. What made her feel like she needed to plan everything? She was quiet for a moment, and then she started telling me things she had never shared before. She talked about her childhood, about growing up in a home where things were unpredictable. Her parents fought a lot, and money was always tight. She never knew if dinner would be a happy family moment or a screaming match. She never knew if her dad would come home late or not at all. That uncertainty scared her as a kid. So as she grew up, she learned to control whatever she could control. She made lists. She planned ahead. She tried to eliminate surprises from her life. If she knew what was coming, she felt safe. If she had a plan, she could handle anything. It worked for a while. She became successful at work because she was reliable and organized. She maintained friendships because she never forgot birthdays or important dates. But somewhere along the way, that coping mechanism became a prison. She was so focused on preventing bad surprises that she also eliminated all the good surprises, all the spontaneous joy, all the unexpected magic that makes life interesting. The tumor diagnosis, she said, was the wake-up call she didn't know she needed. It was her body telling her that she couldn't control everything, no matter how many lists she made or how well she planned. Life was going to throw curveballs, and she could either spend her whole life trying to avoid them, or she could learn to dance in the rain when they came. She chose dancing. Even if she wasn't very good at it yet, I felt tears forming in my eyes as she talked. I had been with her for 8 months, and I thought I knew her. But this conversation revealed so much more depth, so much vulnerability, that she had kept hidden. I realized that I had my own walls too. I told her that sometimes I felt like I wasn't good enough for her. She was so accomplished, so put together, and I was just a regular guy with a regular job and regular dreams. I worried that one day she would realize she could do better and leave. She looked at me with surprise and shook her head. She told me that was exactly why she fell for me in the first place. I didn't try to be perfect. I didn't pretend to have everything figured out. I was genuine, and that made her feel like she could relax around me, even if she didn't always let herself do that. She said my easygoing nature balanced her intensity, and she needed that more than she ever admitted. We sat there talking for what felt like hours but also felt like minutes. The conversation flowed naturally from deep topics to lighter ones and back again. She told me about dreams she had given up on, like learning to paint or traveling to small villages in different countries without an itinerary. I told her about my fear of failure and how it sometimes stopped me from trying new things. We shared memories from before we met, funny stories and embarrassing moments. We laughed until our stomachs hurt, and we were quiet during the serious parts, just holding hands and being present with each other. Around midnight, she suddenly jumped up and said she was starving. The old her would have felt guilty about eating so late, worried about digestion and sleep schedules. But tonight was different. She grabbed my phone and ordered pizza, the kind with extra cheese and all the toppings. The unhealthy kind she usually avoided. When it arrived, we ate sitting on the bedroom floor, the box between us, talking with our mouths full and not caring about crumbs or grease on our fingers. It was messy and perfect. After we finished the pizza, she had another idea. She went to my living room and started going through my collection of old music. I had everything from classic rock to jazz to embarrassing pop songs from the 90s. She picked a random album, something upbeat, and turned up the volume. Then she came back to the bedroom, grabbed both my hands, and pulled me up. She started dancing, and not the elegant kind of dancing you see at weddings. This was silly, carefree dancing with no rhythm or rules, just movement and laughter. I felt awkward at first because I've never been a good dancer, but seeing her so free and happy made me stop caring. We danced around my small apartment, bumping into furniture, spinning each other around, and acting like complete fools. At one point, she tripped over the coffee table and we both collapsed onto the couch, laughing so hard we couldn't breathe. When was the last time we had laughed like that? When was the last time either of us had done something just for the pure fun of it, without worrying about looking silly or doing it right. As we caught our breath, she suggested we play cards. I didn't even know I still had playing cards, but she found an old deck in one of my drawers. We played the simplest games, the ones everyone learns as kids, and we made up ridiculous rules as we went along. Every time someone won a hand, they got to ask the other person any question, and it had to be answered honestly. That's how I learned that she secretly wanted to quit her corporate job and maybe open a small bookstore someday. That's how she learned that I once wanted to be a musician but gave up after my first performance went badly in high school. The questions started silly but became deeper as the night went on. She asked me what I was most afraid of. I told her I was afraid of living a life that didn't matter, of getting to the end and realizing I never took any chances or made any real impact. She nodded like she understood completely. When it was my turn, I asked her what she would do if she had no fear at all. She thought about it for a long time and then said she would stop trying to control every outcome and just trust that things would work out, or that she would be strong enough to handle it if they didn't. Around 3 in the morning, we were both tired but not ready to sleep. She looked at me with that mischievous smile again and suggested we go somewhere. I asked where, and she said it didn't matter. Anywhere we could watch the sunrise together. So we grabbed our jackets and got in my car. I started driving with no particular destination in mind, just following roads that looked interesting. We ended up at this 24-hour diner on the edge of town, the kind of place that looks like it hasn't changed since the 80s. We walked in, and there were only a few other people there, mostly tired truck drivers and night shift workers. We slid into a booth by the window, and she ordered pancakes with extra syrup, something she would normally never allow herself to eat. I ordered the same. While we waited for our food, we just sat there looking at each other across the table, not needing to fill the silence with words. The window next to us faced east, and slowly, very slowly, the sky started to change color. Dark blue turned to lighter blue, then hints of pink and orange appeared on the horizon. Our pancakes arrived just as the sun began to peek over the distant buildings. We ate slowly, taking breaks to watch the sunrise through the smudged diner window. It wasn't a fancy view or a romantic beach setting, but somehow it was perfect. She reached across the table and took my hand, and she told me that this was what she wanted more of in her life. Not grand gestures or expensive experiences, but real moments with real connection. She wanted to stop waiting for the perfect time and start creating meaningful times, even in imperfect situations. I squeezed her hand and told her I wanted that too. I realized that I had also been playing it safe in our relationship, never rocking the boat, never suggesting anything too spontaneous because I thought she preferred structure. But maybe we had both been tiptoeing around each other, both afraid to show our full selves. This night had cracked something open between us, something honest and raw and beautiful. The weeks that followed that unforgettable night were a blur of activity and emotion. She had appointments with specialists, pre-surgery consultations, and all the medical preparation that came with her upcoming procedure. I went with her to every single appointment, holding her hand in waiting rooms and asking questions when she was too overwhelmed to speak. The surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks after our no-rules night, and every day that passed felt both too fast and too slow. During those weeks, something fundamental shifted between us. She didn't go back to her old, rigid ways, but she also didn't try to be spontaneous every single day. Instead, she found a balance. She still made plans because that's part of who she was. But she also learned to deviate from those plans without panicking. She started saying yes to random suggestions, like grabbing ice cream on a Tuesday evening, or taking a different route home, just to see something new. I changed too. I became more vocal about my feelings instead of keeping them bottled up. If something bothered me, I said it. If I wanted to do something special for her, I didn't wait for the right moment, I just did it. We both became more present with each other, more authentic, less afraid of showing vulnerability. The day of the surgery finally arrived. I took her to the hospital early in the morning, and we sat in the pre-operation room together. She was nervous. I could tell by the way she kept fidgeting with the hospital bracelet on her wrist. But she was also calm in a way I hadn't seen before. She looked at me and said thank you, not just for being there that day, but for being patient with her over the months, for accepting her quirks, and for not running away when she revealed her diagnosis and all her fears in one overwhelming night. I told her there was nowhere else I would rather be, and no one else I would rather be with. The nurses came to take her into surgery, and I kissed her forehead, told her I loved her, and watched as they wheeled her away. The next few hours were the longest of my life. I sat in the waiting room, drinking terrible coffee and trying to distract myself with my phone. But nothing worked. All I could do was think about her and hope everything would be okay. When the surgeon finally came out and told me the operation was successful, I felt my whole body relax. The tumor had been removed completely, and while she would need time to recover, the prognosis was excellent. I was allowed to see her once she woke up from anesthesia. She looked tired and pale, with bandages wrapped around her head, but when she saw me, she smiled, that genuine smile I had come to love so much. Her recovery took several weeks. I stayed with her as much as possible, helping with daily tasks, making sure she took her medications, and keeping her company during the boring hours of healing. We watched countless movies, played more card games, and talked about everything and nothing. She had to take time off work, which was hard for her at first, but then she started to see it as a gift. She used the time to think about what she really wanted from life, not what she thought she should want. 6 months after the surgery, she got the news we had been waiting for. Her follow-up scans were completely clear. The doctors were confident that she had recovered fully and that the tumor wouldn't come back. We celebrated quietly that evening, just the two of us, with takeout food and sparkling juice, sitting on my apartment floor like we had on that first no-rules night. Our relationship continued to grow stronger. She eventually did make a change in her career, not quitting entirely but shifting to a role that gave her more work-life balance. She started taking painting classes on weekends, something she had mentioned wanting to do during our late-night conversation. She wasn't great at it, but that wasn't the point. The point was trying, experiencing, living. Then, one random Tuesday morning, about a year after that night that changed everything, I decided to do something completely spontaneous myself. We were both in my bathroom getting ready for work, standing side by side at the sink, brushing our teeth in our mismatched pajamas. I looked at her in the mirror, with toothpaste foam on her lips and her hair messy from sleep, and I realized I wanted every morning to look exactly like this for the rest of my life. I rinsed my mouth, put down my toothbrush, and got down on one knee right there on the bathroom floor. She turned around with confusion, still holding her toothbrush, and I asked her to marry me. No fancy restaurant, no planned speech, no hidden photographer. Just us in our most ordinary moment, which somehow made it the most extraordinary. She stood there, shocked for a second, then started laughing with tears running down her face. She put down her toothbrush and said yes, over and over again. Yes. She told me later that she loved how I proposed because it proved that we had both learned the most important lesson from that unforgettable night. The best moments in life aren't the ones you spend months planning and trying to make perfect. They're the ones that happen naturally when you're brave enough to be yourself with someone who accepts you completely. We both finally understood that real love isn't about following rules or meeting expectations. It's about showing up honestly, supporting each other through the scary times, and choosing to build a life together that has room for both planning and spontaneity, for both structure and freedom, for both safety and adventure. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.